So when you're praying to God falsely that you really want to feel these fears.
Yeah. And you don't really.
But no, and you don't really. But you're not aware of feeling any fear about not wanting to feel the fears, if that makes sense. But, yeah.
Well, let's look at it. Let's look at what often we do with grief or all the emotions I've mentioned. Many of us are saying, please to God to help me get to my causal emotion. We know that if we release causal emotion, our law of attraction changes, right? We're going to be happier. So most of us feel like, I really would like to connect with some of this causal emotion. So we try to connect with the causal emotion. But we don't really want to connect with the causal emotion most of the time. Because if we really wanted to, we already would be doing it right now, right? This is something we need to remember as a very basic thing. If I'm not right now connecting with the causal emotion, then I don't want to. And I need to be honest and say, I don't want to. I don't want to connect with this causal emotion. You know, the times that I've said I don't want to, sometimes within 2 minutes I've been feeling the causal emotion. It's amazing what it does. It's some kind of psychological thing, and I still don't really get it, really. But basically what it feels like is you're allowing yourself to feel that you don't want to do something, and that's more allowing than it is when you're trying to say, I want to, when you don't really. And to be frank with you, what's actually going on inside of you is it's the truth that will open you up. And I'm not just saying God's truth will open you up. What I'm saying is when you're truthful with God, it will open you up, right? You try it even in your family. When you're truthful with your family, that's when emotions start coming out, right? It's when you're all trying to cover it over and make out and all that, no emotions come out then, right? But as soon as you're truthful with a family member, what happens? You start connecting with your sadness about that particular thing that you're talking about, or your anger about it and so forth, because you're being truthful, because you're in a dialogue. So what I'm suggesting is, have this dialogue with God. Initially, it's not going to be a very good dialogue. It's going to be like, a lot of times it's going to be like angry dialogue towards God. Upset about this law and that law and why this has happened to me and all these different things. I don't want to deal with my emotions. Someone else should have to deal with it. They're to blame, I'm not to blame. All these different things are going to come out of you. They are your anger blocks in dealing with your relationship with God. Does that make sense? And then after that, you'll start getting into some fears. And so you can start discussing your fears. I don't want to have to go around doing this teaching work when I'm getting lots and lots of people criticising me all the time. I don't know about you, but criticism doesn't feel that good to me at the moment, right? So what happens a lot of times, I say I'm Jesus, or I say, I start talking about first century existence or something like that, and I just get a barrage from an audience, right? A lot of times this happens. Now, I go home and I go, do I really want to be doing this? Like putting myself in front of a couple of hundred people who half of the time or 3/4 of the time, all they want to do is just spend the time criticising me. Last week, I got quite a number of emails, as Mary will attest to, about all the things I did wrong last week, right? In the groups and whatever, right? And all the personal things when somebody came up and asked me a question, what I should have said to them and what I didn't say and how unloving I was and all these different things. And you'll be surprised how this happens on a weekly basis, part of my law of attraction at the moment, right? And so I need to feel my way through that law of attraction and allow those emotions to come up. And what comes up for me is emotions like, wow, like I give my time for free, and it's mostly women who do this. So I get a group of women coming up and criticising me about how I'm not gentle enough, and I'm not understanding enough, and I'm not kind enough, and I'm not enough, and I said some things that they didn't like, and and I get this list of things emailed back to me. Generally, it's quite good because it's a pointed list, dot pointed list, very very clear, and it's amazing how many times that happens. And so then I go into these emotions which I still need to clear. Why do I want to do this? Like I don't want to be Jesus. Who wants to be Jesus? Do you want to be Jesus instead? I'll let you be one. And that's fine. I'll just go into insignificance. But I love the truth. I love the divine truth, and this is my problem. You see, I love the divine truth more than I like being hammered on the weekend, sort of thing. So a lot of the times, what happens now is that I'm in my passion speaking the divine truth. I get hammered in return back, and so what I do then is I allow myself to go into the emotion, and I even talk about that with God. Like, what do you expect from me? like, I want some help here. Like, you know, I want some help here in the sense of like, all I want is to be able to present the divine truth and not get hammered every time doing it, right? And so I feel about those emotions, and I know many of you don't do that, right? Hammer me, I mean. So I know many of you feel very appreciative, but see, with my emotional injury that I have at the moment, I don't feel that as much as I feel the times I get hammered, right? And this is what happens is until we deal with these emotional injuries, the ones that are the triggering ones are the ones that are exposed within us. So I have to work my way through that emotion, feel those emotions. And some of the emotions that come up are like a fear of being attacked. Right? So that's a big emotion still for both myself and Mary. A fear of being physically, violently harmed in putting ourselves out there. One of the emails I got this week was a pretty violent email about how I'm causing major delusion. I'm delusioned, totally myself, of course, and then and of course Mary is too in this particular email, and then all of these different things about all of this untruth that I'm teaching, and that woe will be on me, and God will punish me, and God will, all of these things, like just lots and lots of stuff about their own anger, really. So we often get these kind of criticisms back, of course, because we're open with our email address and we're open with all these things. You just get your law of attraction kicking in. And what I do is allow myself to feel the fear of that. Like, what does that feel like? It feels terrible sometimes. And I allow myself to feel, and each time I allow myself to feel, I release a bit of that, and then the next time it affects me far less. So that's how, like, years ago when I started doing this, like, you know, I'd get up in a group of 20 or 30, you know, 3/4 would walk out in part the way through the discussion generally with anger and rage, and then the rest would be actually listening for a while, but eventually they too would get into anger and rage about something I've said, and many of you in the future will, by the way, get into anger and rage about something I've said, and I feel that rage and I feel that anger, and before what I would do is I'd go into this fear about people's anger, like start to tremble and feel shaky inside and feel really terrible inside, and so I'd be really worried, you know, about all of their anger, and I'd have a terror-based response, in other words, to their anger that I'd have to allow myself to feel. Let myself feel it. The next time it goes, you know, gets better. And I described last weekend how I've had some pretty major, people ringing me up, threatening me to kill me and all sorts of things, and I've had to work my way through those emotions in terms of what that causes or triggers within me with regard to my fears. So the key is to allow your law of attraction, and that's the next thing I'd like to write down, is to allow your law of attraction to trigger your fear. So notice your law of attraction. I don't like using acronyms. Law of attraction, that stands for. Notice your law of attraction.